Here we are, streets of South LA, possible kidnapping suspect, and with the victim believed to be in the car, Jeff and Susie.
And Desmond, any idea about the kidnapping itself?
Oh, spike strips.
He's turning around to avoid the spike strips.
Yeah, turning around. It sure looked like he might have. Oh, look at that. We can barely see off the end of the lens there, throwing them out, throwing those spike strips out, and it might have gotten the back of one of those tires there. I saw that abrupt move. And it might even have a spike strip dragging on the ground behind one of the bumpers. But Susie, you were asking about the actual kidnapping. We don't know anything about the circumstances of that. Again, it's just it's strange that this was first considered child endangerment, and then LAPD kind of all of a sudden changed it to kidnapping. So totally unclear what all is going on, but you saw that spike strip attempt, and that's by virtue of the suspect kind of going around the same surface streets. It allowed LAPD to get in position and get those spike strips out. I didn't hear them say if it was a good spike or not. It certainly looked like it might have been, and that spike strip may actually still be dangling from the back of this SUV.
Well, he certainly has gotten more aggressive with the driving since he avoided that spike strip, at least with all four tires. This is a rather large SUV. Appears to be some sort of, maybe it's a Yukon or a Tahoe, maybe a Suburban, but it's a large vehicle, older vehicle. We understand this is a kidnapping suspect behind the wheel. We do not know how many children inside this vehicle, but Susie, we know of at least one. And this is a driver wanted for kidnapping. We assume that those people that he has kidnapped is in the car with him. Again, we don't know just exactly how many, but obviously this is very, very stressful for police. Sure. They have not only a driver who's out of control, but they have children involved inside that vehicle.
It's so fragile. It's so delicate, such a delicate situation. And with the protocol they have, you know, usually we're talking, Jeff, about a supervisor plus two cars chasing for the LAPD. But in a situation like this, they're going to up those stakes a little bit, and they're going to add some more patrol cars just because of what's happening and the actual situation. Looks like the car's slowing down just a bit. I don't know if it's trying to make a right turn or maybe slow down for the intersection there. But Desmond, where are we now?
We're on westbound Imperial Highway, getting ready to cross the 110 freeway, so still on the border of South LA, pretty close to the interchange of the 110 and the 105. I was just trying to look down at these tires. They look to be some pretty big rims on this older SUV, maybe larger than 20-inch rims. So you got, less rubber for the spike strips to penetrate there. But I can't see there if any damage has been done on the driver's side. Those tires look to be completely intact, but when we were looking at that spike attempt from a distance, it looked like the LAPD may have gotten the passenger side. We're not going to be able to get to the other side of this vehicle right now, again, by virtue of LAX's airspace restrictions, but just went over the 110, westbound on the 105. We watched the suspect go through a couple of red lights and definitely taking some chances there, make some abrupt moves. We're getting kind of some high speeds here, maybe up around 50 miles an hour. You can see the spotlight from LAPD's helicopter overhead as well. They've had a pretty good visual on this one. Just going to widen out and see how many LAPD units we have behind. We have at least 3, like you were saying there, Susie, as we make our way westbound kind of towards the Willowbrook, Hawthorne, actually the Hawthorne area. It was still north of the 105. Westbound on Imperial Highway.
Yeah, I think this all started at Imperial and Broadway was where this call came in. A driver wanted for kidnapping. We understand at least one victim in the car, possibly more than that, all minors. So we believe those who are kidnapped, the children, are in this vehicle as this car is going pretty fast at night on these surface streets in a rather large SUV. And of course, Susie, safety is a priority for police always, but there's got to be added priority here because of children being involved. They did have that spike strip that they tried to deploy. We understand maybe the passenger side front tire may have been may have run over one of those spike strips, may be compromised, but nonetheless still going a pretty good clip at this time. But you got to understand, right after the spike strip, he avoided it. On the right is going to be that evasive move. He's become a little bit more aggressive of a driver.
Over the divider.
Even more aggressive.
Here. Yep. Yeah, right over there. And then you see LAPD, they're not going to follow him there, but they will go through that light, by virtue of getting some traffic out of the way for them. Don't have to do anything that dangerous. But there, yeah, we saw that suspect going right over that divider briefly onto the wrong side of the roadway. I believe we're going to be coming up to Hawthorne Boulevard here fairly quickly, or Crenshaw anyway. westbound. I'm just looking at Hawthorne Airport in front of me, but we're on Imperial Highway. We've been on Imperial for some time, and just hoping it. Looking at the way that this driver is going, maybe that spike strip was not very successful. We saw actually a couple of attempts there with LAPD, and we saw him do that illegal U-turn there, and that was when LAPD tried to really get the spikes from underneath. So it was a pretty valiant effort by officers, but just looking at how this vehicle is going right now, it certainly looks to me like still got all 4 tires just fine.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely going to be considered a high-risk situation, especially with the victims inside this vehicle. You know, tactical options definitely going to be a different situation in this case, obviously, because there are people inside this car right now. The LAPD, as Desmond was just talking about, attempted 2 spike strips, we believe. But something like a pit maneuver, especially at this speeds, they're not going to attempt it. But also because of the fact that there are people in the back of this car, they're not going to try something like that. And this is also a larger vehicle as well. So they're pretty limited in their options right now just because of how delicate the situation really is.
Yeah, I was going to say they are very limited in their tactics and what they can do. There's a number of things that you've seen them do over time. Obviously, they're going to try the spike strips since they have already done that twice. I would assume that they try to do that again if they get the chance. That would probably be the safest way to disable this police pursuit. And I would assume that the pit, as you mentioned, Susie, would be off the table because children are inside, and that could, of course, hurt them. It'd be interesting to know what the protocol of something like this would be. You know, those officers are going to be very cognizant of the children in this vehicle. They would probably contact the family if they could to try to reach the driver. But this driver is going extremely fast. I don't know, Des, could we ever bring up the miles per hour that we do on occasion to find out just how fast this driver is going? I know we have that technology to do that, but it certainly is a pretty fast clip on these surface streets, which is even more dangerous. And it's dark and it looks like the...
yeah.
Go ahead, Des.
Well, I'm thinking we're 70, maybe even 80 miles an hour on surface streets right now. Looking at this, just flew by a couple of those vehicles there. So this is extremely frightening when you're talking about, you know, children in the car as well, possibly more than one. Right through another red light there, nearly clipped the back of that bus right there. You just hope that these children are at the very least in some, in some child safety seats if they're really young, or that they are, in their seatbelts, because this is pretty frightening to watch when we know that there's innocent children in here, or certainly suspected to be. That was what we heard from LAPD, is that they have a very strong suspicion that there's at least one, possibly more than one child in the vehicle here with this kidnapping suspect. And we just saw his hand kind of dangling out the window, maybe motioning something to police. LAPD still in pursuit here. We are getting pretty close to the 405, so we covered a lot of ground here on Imperial Highway through another red light, a huge intersection right there. And we'll just, at this point, Jeff and Susie, we'll see if they can use spike strips again at some point, but not when we're seeing speeds this high.
Well, let's see if we could bring the map tracker in here and see exactly where this is. We know, is this still on Imperial Highway? Because it all started in South LA at Broadway, and we know one of those side streets was where the spike strips are deployed. We might have lost Des, but Susie, this continues to be a very dire situation. Children involved in this car here. The driver obviously is putting them in danger, going at these very fast speeds, not even slowing down, going through these intersections with the red light.
Blowing through those red lights, so dangerous. And you can only imagine what could be happening in this car right now. We don't know if there's one child or 2 children in this car. We don't know what the circumstances were of this kidnapping. It could be someone who just picked them off the street. It could be a parental abduction. We have no idea, but I imagine the LAPD is in talks with DCFS right now, with Family Services, to make sure that they get the information that they need to make sure that they get this person, whoever it might be. It could be their parent. We often see that happening with kidnappings. A parent takes off with 2 of the kids for a scheduled visit, and they never return with them or take off with them when the mother or father didn't know that was happening. So, Desmond, where are we now? Looks like you're going through some freeway areas.
Yeah, 405 and the 105 interchange. So we're right next to LAX at this point. It's anyone's guess what this suspect, what their strategy is here, to if they're just driving aimlessly, or if there's a strategy to where they're driving right now. But we're come quite a ways now out of South LA from around Broadway and Manchester, I believe, was where we heard some of the first radio traffic on this pursuit. So now we're parallel with the LAX. You see another one of these ramps from the 105. And of course, we're really close to LAX now, so that's not going to help our cause as far as airspace and being able to keep right under this. And let's see, okay, going northbound now on this may be Aviation that we're going north on. So again, right by LAX, and you have to just bear with us here with the airspace restrictions. Hopefully we'll be able to, if he continues northbound, we'll just be able to go right over LAX and keep this up with you. Now coming up to another big intersection here, and right through yet another red light, and you can see the green line tracks there just along the left. LAPD's helicopter. This is not good news for them, because they when they get really close to LAX like this, even LAPD has to follow some airspace restrictions, and they're actually having to break off from this right now. You just notice them go through our shot. We have to see the airspace to them. Once they go through, then we can go through. So right now, this is exclusively a ground pursuit. And we have seen LAPD lose some pursuits in this manner when the airship was not able to stay overhead. So we'll see how this tracks, but we're northbound on Aviation, actively now crossing LAX.
Okay, that's northbound on Aviation, crossing LAX, and of course that's the reason why we have a long shot, because going right through a red light again, through an intersection at a high rate of speed. That's our chopper is up over LAX, and there's that LA airspace that they got to be able to get around. So that's why we have such a wide shot on the left, which is live, and on the right is going to be that point where the police LAPD put out that stop stick. You see the driver do an immediate U-turn and go the other way. I don't think he ran over it.
It's unclear if they actually hit the spike strip, but they could have. But as Desmond was talking about, they were going at such a good clip, a speed on down Imperial, and it didn't look like their car was at all whatsoever. No tire damage whatsoever.
Taking a right-hand turn there again. This is a larger SUV. Appears to be either a Tahoe or a Yukon, an older model. We believe there are at least one child in there. At least there could be other minors in there as well. Of course, the driver wanted for kidnapping. We assume kidnapping the children in this vehicle. We don't know if this is a dispute, a domestic dispute of some sort, or anything like that. We're just getting information as to the reason why this driver is wanted by police. This all began at Imperial and Broadway in South LA.
And as you can see, we're right near LAX right now, and that's why Desmond is taking this wide shot here near the airport, because as Jeff was just talking about, we're talking about LAX airspace that we can't infringe upon. So we certainly want to take caution here, but we're trying to follow it just as closely as possible, as soon as possible. We will, of course, bring you that shot once again. But if you're just joining us here on KCAL 9 News at 8, this is breaking news. The LAPD in pursuit of a kidnapping suspect, possibly 2 children inside this car. We are pretty certain that there is at least 1 child. At first, the LAPD was calling the want on this pursuit child endangerment, and then it was quickly upgraded to being a kidnapping suspect. So again, we don't know the circumstances, but on the right-hand side is what you're looking at is what we saw earlier of the LAPD attempting to stop this car with spike strips.
Let's go back up to Desmond Shaw on Sky 9 with the very latest as he continues to track LA's latest pursuit. Des?
Yeah, Jeff and Susie. So we just went now east on Century away from Aviation, which is not the best news for us as far as providing you a really crisp picture. So we're getting really close to SoFi Stadium. It seems pretty aimless to me as far as the driving goes. It looks like the speeds may have at least calmed down a little bit. And as he goes through another intersection, might have been Prairie right there that just went through. So we're getting really, really close to SoFi Stadium, where it does not look like there's an event. I was just thinking that it might run into some stadium traffic if there would have been a concert or something going on, but it looks like the stadium is dark this evening. So LAPD, and you may notice they still don't have their helicopter overhead because they went to go make what they call the Sepulveda transition, where they have to go over Sepulveda Boulevard. And I believe they have to, maybe my pilot Ryan will correct me, if they have to complete that transition before they can even come back the other way. So even though they're law enforcement, they don't just have free reign to do whatever they
Yeah.
want because they're chasing a kidnapping suspect. So this is way more frustrating for LAPD's helicopter than it is for us, just because they can't keep those eyes in the air so easily when the suspect is pulling maneuvers like this. So they should be catching back up shortly. Now, once they get back on the other side of LAX, they'll have a little bit more wiggle room on this side of the airport, especially as we get farther away and crossing the 110. But eastbound on Century, not too far from SoFi Stadium and the huge entertainment district there. LAPD continuing. This one, haven't heard any word about any more spike strips or anything, but short of waiting for this driver to run out of gas or stop on their own volition, that's probably going to be one of the only strategies they have right now.
And Desmond, just out of curiosity, how come you can be in the air but the LAPD airship cannot?
Well, we're actually just outside of the space right now. We are right over the 105, and this is just kind of, the power of our zoom lens that's able to provide this. So we're definitely looking at a distance. We're looking. We're not as far. Whoa, that was really close to that vehicle there. Not nearly as far. We're not nearly as close as it appears.
Sure.
But LAPD, they want to get right on top of this. So because they want to, get their spotlight on this one and make sure that they provide enough illumination for the ground units, and just make sure that if this suspect gets crazy and speeds away, that they'll still be able to have, a set of eyes on this one from the air. But so since they need to be directly overhead, they're gonna have to wait till this gets, I think, a little farther away from LAX to get directly back overhead.
And of course, this is going to be a high priority for LAPD. We got children involved. This is a driver behind the wheel of a large SUV wanted for kidnapping. We know of at least one minor, a child, inside this vehicle, possibly more than one inside the vehicle. Police would like to end this in a very safe manner. Safety a priority always for LAPD, but of course, when children are involved, that takes off the table a number of tactics that they would normally use, such as a pit maneuver, maybe some other different tactics as well. But they obviously have tried the spike strips. Are we slowing down here, Des? Go ahead.
Well,
he's behind a building.
We were just trying to see what. Yeah, it was just behind a building there, so just wanted to make sure we had the best shot we can. But now, hitting a little bit of this this traffic. Well, what do we got right here? We got LAPD right over here, waiting just in case, seeing what the suspect's going to do. And here he goes, cutting over onto the wrong side of the roadway briefly to get around that little mini traffic jam. There you saw the front entrance to SoFi Stadium. So as we drift back towards the east with LAPD, but yeah, you're right, Susie. This is obviously a very high priority for LAPD. This is not a suspect wanted for a traffic infraction, failure to yield, or even just high speeds or something. We're talking about, potentially a very, very serious crime. And so this is one of those ones where they're going to stick with it, as many units as they need. Spike strips, definitely, top of the list if the opportunity presents itself. And, hopefully it will, now that this suspect seems to be a little more tempered in their driving, at least compared to what we saw earlier on Imperial Highway, where we saw some speeds up on, around 70 or 80 miles an hour.
Yeah, and we're talking about this coming to an end. Not only is the LAPD talking about how to end this, those kind of tactics, but also at the end, how they're going to get these people out of the car. Obviously, the children are their priority, the safety of these children. If there's more than one child in this car, they're obviously going to look into probably SWAT tactics, I would imagine, just in case this driver does not want to come out of the car when this comes to an end. But hopefully it comes to a safe end, stops, instead of having to use other methods.
Well, even before that starts, just think about what these children are going through right now. We have them being held against their will. We have a driver that's gone against traffic through red lights, been speeding, reckless driving, eluding police. I mean, those children have got to be very frightened, so obviously police have to take that into account, and they will. There'll be a number of officers there to account for the children and to take care of the children. But this is a very, very high risk situation because they can't use all the tactics. There are children involved. They don't know if they're strapped in to the car correctly or not. That's obviously why they wouldn't do a pit maneuver. But this is one of those things that's going to probably take a little bit of time unless the driver decides to do the right thing and pull over and end this thing peacefully. But we've seen situations like this before, and this driver, with every indication has shown, Susie, really no willing to stop. They've had the opportunity to stop. There's been a number of red lights they've gone through. They've sped through these surface streets, and it really doesn't look like the driver is willing to give up anytime soon.
Yeah, and if this is in fact a domestic
Probably.
situation, I mean, obviously emotions run high. This is a very volatile situation. Who knows what happened prior to these children or child being taken against their will? We have no idea. We don't know what's happening inside this car right now. Does this person have a weapon?
Yeah.
We have no idea.
We hope that they're obviously LAPD. They are reaching out to family members. There are family members of the children. You know that that's one of the things that they're trying to do, to get to talk to the driver. We've seen that on occasion where they've been able to contact the driver and talk to them during a pursuit via cell phone. They've been able to do things like that. I'm sure that that's one of the things they're trying to do tonight. Maybe they've already done it. We don't know, but that is just certainly one of the things that they do. That's many of the quivers that they have, arrows in the quiver, if you will, just that they can try to use to get this thing taken care of, to neutralize this situation. But one of the reasons why this shot is so wide is because this is near LAX airspace, and our chopper can't get right over LAX, so we have to go from a pretty good distance to get our shot, and that's the reason why we're usually on top of it, but that's the reason why tonight we can't get right over the shot. I understand LAPD helicopter as well having some issues like that.
Yeah, and Desmond doing just an incredible job in Sky 9, keeping this shot steady for us and really holding it. Desmond, where are we now?
We are still in South LA, but I believe we just crossed Normandy eastbound on Century Boulevard. You might still see the flicker of the spotlight overhead. LAPD has managed to make it back overhead now that they have enough distance from the final approach to LAX. So you have, you know, the Bravo airspace is what they call the LAX airspace. You can think of it from the 405 all the way to Alameda, and then the 105 to just about Adams. We're crossing Vermont right now. There's a huge intersection right through that red light. You saw someone got stuck in the intersection there. But Century is also particularly critical airspace inside of that restricted airspace, because that's where the planes actually approach to land at LAX. So you saw LAPD, they were not able to have their helicopter over for quite some time. But now that we're pretty close to the 110 and continuing on an eastward trajectory, that's good for their helicopter. So they are able to get those eyes from the air. And I am hearing some radio traffic about one of their next moves. I don't want to tip them off, but hopefully we may see a development here. They're as far as strategy to try to slow this driver down or possibly stop the vehicle. So we'll just see what the next move is here, and hopefully we get out of this airspace and we can provide you a better picture shortly.
Yeah, we'll just bring up to speed here really quick at 5 minutes before the top of the hour here on KCAL 9. This is breaking news. This is LA's latest pursuit. A driver wanted for kidnapping. That is the white, large SUV you see there in your screen. We understand the driver wanted for kidnapping. At least one victim inside the vehicle, a child, maybe more than one. This driver we have seen eluded police for quite some time now, has driven against traffic, has gone through red lights, has been speeding, reckless driving as well.
There we go.
And this all started at Imperial and Broadway in South LA, and now appears to be going through another major intersection with red lights. That's a number of things that he's been doing that's very dangerous tonight. On the right-hand part of your screen, it's going to show the driver avoiding a stop stick by LAPD, making that U-turn and turning around, and then Susie very quickly after that starting to drive pretty erratically. Yeah,
really fast, and also going over a center divider, which we thought was really weird because that person just went over the center divider and then onto the intersection just as they normally would without having gone over this median, as you see on the right side of your screen right there. I don't understand why they did that particularly. Try to maybe, elude police, but looks like they were just right there behind them anyway. The only attempt at stopping this car, as Jeff was just talking about, was spike strips. And right there on your screen, you just saw them almost hitting a bus, very close, as we were talking about some erratic driving happening. And you just wonder, again, what is happening inside this car right now? Are the children safe? If there is more than one child in this car, a lot of questions still tonight, but we do know that this is in fact a kidnapping suspect. Original want was child endangerment, and that was quickly upgraded to a kidnapping suspect. We don't know if there's one child in this car or two children inside this car, but the LAPD certainly talking about a high-risk situation tonight. And we were talking about how the LAPD might be in talks with DCFS or the Department of Children and Family Services to see if they have any information that could help them in this case. And it looks like we're heading into a neighborhood now, onto a narrow residential street, perhaps. Is that an alleyway or a driveway of some sort? It
Sure,
looks like.
could be. You know, it certainly could be one of those things. Oh, is it stopping? This may be in a, well, I think he's trying to back up. You know, we've seen this a lot, that they go to a place where they're very familiar with. I think they are now driving into a driveway. We're going to hit you at the top of the hour. Desmond Shaw is going to be on KCAL 9 News at 9 o'clock moments. But we're taking a live look here that looks like the driver, police lighting up the back of that SUV in a driveway now of a home. We could assume this might be related to the driver. We've seen this a number of times, but this is live here. And Susie, you see all the units to the right, and of course, two children, or one child, possibly two, inside this vehicle. The utmost care, safety is a priority, of course.
Yeah, and it looks like they're going to have perhaps a little standoff here, and we'll see how long this lasts. But again, as you mentioned, two children inside this car right now. It's unclear what's happening inside this car, but this is the first time we're actually seeing the car come to a complete stop. So join us on KCAL 9 News at 9.
As you've heard, we have been following this pursuit of a kidnapping suspect. This is KCAL 9 News at 9 o'clock. Pat Harvey with Chris Holmstrom reporting. And Road Sage, our Desmond Shaw overhead in Sky 9. What we're looking at is a home. Where a white SUV, a large vehicle, has pulled up, and this vehicle carries the driver, of course, who at this time is wanted for kidnapping, possibly one or more children. And
Yeah,
it's
I hear
lasted
you.
for quite some time. Chris, I don't know, it seems like I can hear Desmond trying to say something.
Yeah, Desmond's trying to get ready, but you know, if you look in the left-hand side of your screen, it's that white SUV that we're looking at. And you know, it's scary to see situations like this, Pat, because we hear about pursuits happening all the time, but when you hear that there's a potential one or two children inside the vehicle, it makes it scarier.
And it makes a difference on the kind of intervention techniques that they use. They won't use everything that they can because of that fact. Desmond, are you ready to go?
Yeah, Pat and Chris, sorry about the communication problems there. We're off of 95th and Main in South LA. Still waiting for LAX to clear us into this airspace right now. See if they'll let us now that the pursuit portion appears to be over. The vehicle parked. Okay, look at this. We can see from a distance that the door is opening right now. And I just got to note that this driver was in this exact same alley earlier. It was almost like a deja vu situation where they were up on Main. LAPD threw out a spike strip, and he went down this alley and looked like he wanted to surrender, but then continued the pursuit and went all the way to LAX and back. And now he came back right to this exact same spot. So certainly wondering if this is this person's home or the home of a family member, or maybe the home of the children. It's still kind of conjecture, but definitely some familiarity with this home in this driveway with the awning overhead. We're seeing the door come open now.
He's
Just
stepping
have to
out.
hope that the suspect is going to come
Driver
out
stepping out.
and surrender peacefully.
Yeah, and we were hoping, of course, obviously, we're glad to see this in a lot of respects, and that it has, now the door has closed again, Desmond. I can't tell from our vantage point if that suspect got back in that car or if he's out. Well, the suspect is opening the door again.
Yeah, very peculiar here, Pat. I'm sure emotions are very high, as they often are when we're talking about these sorts of delicate situations. Again, it started as child endangerment, but LAPD upgraded it to a kidnapping situation with at least one, possibly two children in the car. We saw that suspect look like they were getting out, and then unclear at this point.
Okay.
No information on that, Chris, but it almost looked like he was ready to come walk out of the alley there, and then got back in the car, closed the door, and now the door is back open and kind of standing outside again. So,
And now the door is closing again, Desmond.
Yep,
You
once
know-
again. So yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Desmond, it's very dark here. Can you possibly see someone else? Did someone come out of that home, or can you tell? I mean, I certainly can't tell from my vantage point because it's so dark where the vehicle is. I can see the door opening. I saw somebody get out, get back in, but just wondering, okay, now the lights are on, the rear lights.
Lights are on, lights are off. Yeah.
Is he blocked in as well?
Very. I don't think so. I didn't see anyone walk in the home. Now the door is open yet again, and yeah, in this small kind of driveway. Haven't seen any other doors open. Haven't seen any indication of anyone else getting overhead. It's just incredibly frustrating for us to try to bring you this shot from this distance right now. Again, off of Main and 95th in this alleyway where the suspect certainly seemed like they wanted to go to earlier, and here they are again. You see LAPD now bringing up their cruisers, and it looks like they're actually trying to block that vehicle in. They may have seen the lights go on and off, and now the lights are flashing on and off, like maybe
almost
they
like
were
he
afraid
had
that
it.
the suspect was going to try to take off again.
Like the hazard lights were on.
And they want to make sure that this suspect's not going to try to take off again.
I mean, it was a
looks
close
like they're
call,
trying to box
Desmond.
the suspect in.
You know, talking about
go ahead,
the
Chris.
spike strips that they were using at that one intersection maybe about 10, 15 minutes ago, and the driver was able to bypass those spike strips at the last minute. I mean, that was pretty impressive on his part. But, you know, it's important to note that since there potentially are one or more children inside the car, they can't do a pit maneuver because, you know, they have to be careful to make sure that the kids aren't hurt. But thankfully, he is blocked in by LAPD right here. And tell us again, what location is this? This is in South LA, right?
South LA, east of the 110, off of 95th and Main, inside of this alley. And that was actually, I believe, the same intersection where LAPD attempted those spike strips both times. The first time did not look like it was successful. They actually had a couple of different attempts. And then we saw them try again, and almost immediately after that, the suspect came into this alley and pulled right into this driveway. And that's where we've been ever since. So this is going to be, you know, they don't have a lot of space to maneuver around either. It's going to be a very difficult situation for LAPD depending on how this escalates. If it ends up turning into a prolonged standoff situation, and they're, you know, in very, very close proximity to the suspect. We haven't heard anything about the suspect being armed and dangerous. That's usually, you know, an assumption, though, that LAPD has to take into account. And obviously, the biggest factor is the children in the car. So you're not going to see them, you know, shoot bean bags or pepper balls or less than lethal or anything like that. They're going to want to not. You have to brandish any weapons around these children. Now we see officers coming up. It looks like they may have just come right up and grab this suspect. I wish we were closer to bring this to you, but you can see a bunch of officers now swarming the SUV, and this is actually really pretty fast by LAPD standards. Sometimes these situations can take a really long time, but I think they were thinking of, you know, the safety of the children. Maybe it's best to just act immediately. Lightning quick there by LAPD, and it looks to me like they're taking the suspect into custody.
Okay, we have not seen, or we can't tell from where we are or where you are right now, Desmond, if they have the children out of the vehicle. And let's just face it, if there's more than one child, we heard that there could be one or more children in the car. Well, that's got to be their priority, but you haven't seen any movement so far. I see an officer that looks like I thought they were trying to go around to the passenger side of the vehicle. Are you able to tell from where you are, Desmond, if they're on that side of the car?
No, I think I just saw that as well. I think I see a child in the arms of one of the officers right there. Just came and got one of those children.
That kid is?
We saw. It looked to be pretty young. They were carrying him. It looked to be a toddler to me. I mean, I'm looking from more than a half mile away. We did just hear them confirm the suspect is in custody at this point, and they got that child. We'll see if there are any more. I think I just saw. Okay, code 4. That's the most important thing.
All right, good.
We saw the one child. I couldn't tell if there was a second or not. I know there was suspicion about a second child, but regardless, we know that the children are safe and the suspect now in custody off of Main and 95th.
All right, and we certainly, we don't know the circumstances surrounding this, the abduction, why it happened in the first place, who the home belongs to, if this was a parent. A lot of unanswered questions, but the best thing and the most latest news that we have is that the suspect is in custody, and officers did take a child out of the car, and the child, I would assume, appears to be fine. So Thank goodness it ended the way that it did. And there were, no injuries,
Very destructive
no
driving.
damages to
Ooh.
other pedestrians or, people driving other cars. So Desmond, thanks for that. We're going to call it a code 4, and we'll check in with you later. Welcome to KCAL 9 News at 9, and we're streaming on CBSN Los Angeles. I'm Pat Harvey.
And I'm Chris Holmstrom in tonight for Juan Fernandez.
A storm that drenched the Southland isn't over yet. Winter storm warnings.
One officer is asking right now if the situation is code 4, which means is the situation clear? Is it resolved? So I'm waiting to hear what they say. You do? Okay. So you still see officers kind of moving around the back of the SUV there. And I still didn't hear them give the all clear on the scanner. One officer asked, and he didn't get an answer. A 5-year-old and a 1-year-old were in the car during this pursuit, per what I'm just hearing on the scanner. So we did see what appeared to be the 1-year-old, but apparently there was also a 5-year-old because they are asking for car seats for a 5-year-old child and a 1-year-old child. Again, this is a driver who was wanted for kidnapping. At this point, it's unclear if those children were the victims or if they were not connected to the kidnapping incident itself. But what we're hearing on the scanner is that they're asking for car seats for a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old who were in the vehicle during this pursuit. The vehicle is a Chevy SUV is what I'm hearing, so. And we just want to thank you guys for tuning into our coverage here. We're going to go get some fuel before the NBC4 News at 11 o'clock. We'll have the latest that came to a peaceful end here in South Los Angeles. But for now, from News Chopper 4 Alpha, I'm Eliana Moreno, along with my pilot, Sarah Garabetian. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you at 11.